They wanted someone to go and talk to the Prophet and intercede. So no one dared to do it. So they said, why don't we send Osama ibn Zayd? He is someone the Prophet Muhammad used to love a lot. Okay, so Osama went to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet said to him, do you try to intercede for somebody in a case connected with Allah's prescribed punishments? And then he got up and he delivered a sermon. So the Prophet, when he found that someone was trying to prevent one of Allah's prescribed punishments from being implemented, this is what he said. What destroyed the nations that came before you was that if a noble person among them stole, they would forgive him. And if a poor person among them stole, they would prescribe God's legal punishment on him. He said, by Allah, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, stole, I will cut off her hand. Bukhari collected it. Fatima, as we know, was the very beloved daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. May God's peace and blessings be on him. He said, look, if my daughter stole, I will implement the punishment of Allah upon her. This is justice. This is equity. That no one is treated differently because of their station, because of their being rich or their being poor. And this in fact is something, this type of justice is something upon which the stability of society is built. And this is something the scholars have mentioned. For example, this is something that Ibn Taymiyyah, one of the great scholars of Islam, he said, that God will support a nation that is just, even if it is disbelieving. So if there is a nation who is just, and justice is the norm in their society, God will support that nation even if they do not believe in God and His Prophet and His revelations. He will support that nation over a nation that is unjust, even if it is believing. So a nation where justice is something that seeks to be established, where equity and fair treatment amongst people is the reality, then God is going to support those people, even if they do not believe in Him, over a nation that is a believing nation, but that nation is corrupt. That nation treats the rich differently from the poor. That nation treats such and such people differently from that and that people. God does not support that nation. Why? Because the affairs of the people, the ordering of society, the peaceful coexistence of human beings depends and is built upon justice. Okay? And this is why there's a beautiful saying from Umar ibn al-Khattab. And he mentioned in one speech he gave to some people, okay? He said, "O my people, Islam is a mighty fortress and a sturdy gate. The fortress of Islam is justice and its gate is truth. If you destroy the fortress and demolish the gate, you will undermine the defenses of the religion." And he went on to say, Islam will remain strong so long as the sultan or the authority is strong. And he says the strength of the sultan or the authority, the ruler, it doesn't come from flogging or from the whip, nor from killing with the sword, but from ruling with justice and holding fast to truth. This is what the strength. And this is actually not true just of the Muslim nation, it is true of any nation. In fact, if you look through history, you will find it. I am sure if you study history carefully, you will find this is the story of the nations of people. That when people implement justice, then you find that their society strengthens and prospers. When they stick to truth, then that society strengthens and prospers. And when they abandon it, then surely that society will begin to disintegrate as much as they abandon justice. Now, we find that the Prophet's companions, they learned these teachings and they acted according to them. And it's one of the amazing things when you study the early history of Islam, of the early Muslims, what I would like to call the true Muslims. the people who really followed Islam the way it was supposed to be followed. Not like a lot of us today, Ramadan Muslims. You know, we just become Muslim for Ramadan. The rest of the time we just like, I don't know what we are. Okay, but these people, look at the way how seriously they took these commands to be just. Abu Bakr was the first ruler of the Muslims after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, and he was very concerned about justice. In fact, one of the first things that he said when he became caliph or khalif of the Muslims, he said, "The weak among you will be strong with me till God willing his rights have been vindicated. And the strong among you will be weak with me if the Lord wills and I have taken what is due from him." What does that mean? He means the poor people are going to be strong. I'm going to treat the poor people as if they're strong and the rich people as if they're weak. So the poor people don't have to worry that because you're poor, I'm going to despise you and I'm going to treat you badly and I'm going to trample over your rights because you're poor and it doesn't really matter. No, I'm going to treat you as if you were strong. And you rich people and you people from noble lineages, don't think that your richness and your nobility is going to save you. I'm going to treat you just like you're a poor person. Meaning people are going to get equity from me. They're going to be treated alike. So no one should be afraid that their rights are going to be transgressed against. And there are many, many examples actually from the lives of not only Abu Bakr, but many of the companions. There's one story about Ali ibn Talib, who was the fourth Khalif. And there's one story, for example, how after a certain battle, someone had stolen his armor. And he found a Christian with his armor. So he accused this Christian that he had stolen his armor, and he lodged a complaint with he's the caliph of the Muslims, by the way, right? He's ruling now an empire that stretches from, I don't know, beyond the Euphrates down into West Africa or whatever, however far it had reached at that stage, not quite that far, but beyond Egypt anyway. So this is the size of his empire, he's the ruler. Yet when he sees a man wearing his armor, what does he do? He goes to the judge. He goes to the judge and he lodges a complaint with the Qadi. So the Qadi calls Ali ibn Talib, the judge, he calls the ruler, the whole ruler of the Muslims, and he asks him, okay, who are your witnesses that this is your armor? And he says, well, my servant, he's a witness, and my son, they're the two witnesses, they know that's my armor. And the judge said, well, I can't accept their witness because they have an interest in it. Because one's your servant and one's your son. They've got an interest. So, that was it. So he said, I can't take this armor from the man. So, Ali accepted it. He's the ruler of the Muslims, he accepted it. So if that's the decision of the judge, that's the judge's decision. And he went away. Of course, when the Christian found out about that, he was so impressed. He came with the armor, he said, this is your armor. And also, he gave Ali on top of that a horse. And also, he became Muslim. That's just one example. There's another very strong example. And if you understand, if you know anything about the Arabs before the time of Islam, you will know how very, very much they respected the strong tribes and the noble lineage, and it's something they used to consider to be so important. If you understand really how important this concept of lineage is, you'll reflect on this story. There is a man, there was a certain prince, a Ghassanid prince. The Ghassanids, by the way, were a largely Christian Arab tribe, okay, based in Sham. There was one certain prince who had converted to Islam, and he was staying as an actual guest of Umar. Umar was the second Khalif, okay, and Umar was, in fact, history is fabled with the legends of the justice of Umar. In fact, we could just spend the whole rest of the talk talking about the stories of his treatment of and his dispensation of justice. It's legendary, okay? The justice of Umar. It became known that this was a phrase, the justice of Umar. In fact, even when the Muslim armies were fighting in Syria and the area now that's known as Jordan and Syria and Palestine and that sort of area. In fact, Christians were writing to Umar. They were writing to him, asking him to come and liberate them from the rule of the Byzantines. And in the letter they would say, well, one letter reads that even though they are our brothers in faith, meaning even though the Byzantines are Christians like us, they treat us unjustly. Whereas we know that you will treat us justly. So they were inviting the Muslims to come and rid them of the tyranny of the Byzantines. This is how the justice of Umar was known. So